Florence is a force. She's a force to be respected, to be reckoned with. She's a force for nature.
She's this tiny, grandmotherly like woman, and yet she's this powerhouse of a woman.
San Francisco Bay originally had 200,000 acres of tidal wetlands.
This all started changing when the Europeans arrived, and wetlands were diked for agriculture, salt production, garbage dumps, and development.
Then in the 1960s, when all of this was going on, Florence started getting interested in what was happening along the edges of the bay.
Oh, I became aware of the natural features of the Bay Area from going up to the 7th floor of the nurses' home at UCSF very, very many years ago, and watching that beautiful layer of fog come through the gate. And the closest thing that we could afford to Berkeley was Palo Alto. That is my humor for the day, that Palo Alto was affordable to us then. And it was so hot on the peninsula that we would put our dinner in a basket, the kids in the car, and we would go down. There was an old, broken down picnic table at the end of Embarcadero Way.
Most people don't go out there and think it's pretty. You go out there and you see mud flats and you say, what's the big deal?
But she saw and valued what they used to be, what they were, even in their industrial state, and what they could be.
Well, she saw them as a beautiful place and lovely land and lovely marshes and living things out there. There weren't just mud. There were all kinds of goodies in mud, and she saw the beauty of it.
That was the most wonderful, peaceful, inviting, lovely place. And we fell in love with the land. And that was an affection that lasted all our lives.
Seeing what was happening around the edges of the bay in the mid-60s, Florence and Art Ogilvie, who is a Santa Clara County planner, approached Congressman Don Edwards with the idea that the way to permanently protect the bay was to establish a national wildlife refuge.
Florence's major accomplishment, I think, is the creation of the refuge through her work with Congressman Don Edwards and the Citizens Committee to complete the refuge.
In 1988, Congressman Don Edwards got a second bill passed to allow the Fish and Wildlife Service to acquire up to 20,000 additional acres from willing sellers. The grand prize happened in 2001 when Fish and Wildlife Service was able to acquire 14,000 acres from the Cargill Salt Company.
Florence led the effort for all of that, and she mobilized people in a very constructive way.
You know, Florence is one of the toughest, most tenacious advocates I know, and also genteel, polite, patient.
She is just everybody's epitome of a gentlewoman.
She uses her velvet gloves. As a result, she's very effective at advocating for her causes.
Just this wonderful, nice woman. But, you know, inside that niceness is, yes, but this is what needs to happen.
She didn't stand up there and rant and rave. She'd say, well now, and it would be very quiet, it would be very peaceful, and she'd say, I would think that if you went in this direction, it would go blah, blah, blah. So everybody would listen to her because it was easy, and she could get away with saying a lot more because she was easy.
You often come into these areas where the local people think they know how to manage the refuge better than you. But Florence wasn't like that. She was always very curious and understanding and not demanding in any way. She was really a friend to the refuge.
You know, we who work on these issues around protecting wildlife and protecting the bay feel a deep urgency about them. So it takes a special kind of person to have that feeling of urgency, but to conduct themselves with patience and persistence.
She's been doing this for 60 plus years, and she has been able to maintain the same level of passion and commitment, perseverance, and dedication towards protection of the San Francisco Bay ecosystem. There are always going to be setbacks. There are always going to be disappointments.
You just have to get up and get back at the next project, the next threat, maybe.
I think what keeps Florence going, what keeps us all going, is appreciating the victories that we've had and the progress that we've made.
I think whatever hardships there were in this work, they were totally offset by the successes.
The house was open to all, and everybody felt welcome there. You just felt that you belonged. She encouraged everybody and appreciated everybody. And I mean, I think that was part of the magic. It wasn't, you could do more. It was, oh, thank you so much for, whether it was just a small thing.
Well, Florence is one of those people who truly understands that you can get a lot done if you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah, it wasn't important for her to be the headliner, and she was willing to let other people take the credit because she wanted the job done. When you're doing this kind of activity, you have to persuade people to help you because you can't do it alone.
She's this amazing person who just sort of convinces you without seeming to.
Once you become part of her family, her environmental advocacy family, there's no getting out of it. You're there for the rest of your life, and maybe your family members will be joining you.
Well, Florence and Phil were a great team together. Phil was an established scientist, and Florence is such a great communicator and organizer, collector of people.
He looked at things from that perspective, very factual, very on the ground. And Florence, I think, had a more outward-going perspective.
I don't think anyone can devote as much time and energy to an issue as I have without the support, love, and continual contribution of effort of the partner.
When I was approached to be co-chair of Citizens Committee, I was very honored, but I also thought of it with a little bit of trepidation because we would be following in Florence's shoes. And as Karen and I often joke, it took two of us to fill those one pair of shoes.
I am quite certain that they are going to save thousands of acres that are still considered for development right now on the bay. That gives me a lot of courage and hope that there are such caring, knowledgeable people.
She definitely handed over the reins, and
My role now, it turns out, is to take credit for what other people are doing. I know right where I would go if I were going to refresh my memory and feelings about wetlands right now. I would go down to Palo Alto, to that platform built out into the water, and I would go at dusk when the tides are changing and the cordgrass sways with the changing and the ripplings in the water.